So I got this really good comment on last week's video that went, I sometimes won't work on a project because I don't want to set up lights or film because I couldn't possibly just want to work on something without documenting it, right? And as soon as I saw that comment, I was like, oh no, no. That's me right now. That comment is 100% me right now, and I don't like being called out like that. I'm sure all of you know that making a YouTube video does not come easily to a lot of people, and there are a lot of steps that are involved. However, after like 2.5 years of doing this off and on, you would think that I would be used to it by now, but it's something that my brain still can't like wrap around the amount of steps that it takes to just, pull the camera out and just sit here and talk to you guys. First, I have to make sure that the batteries are charged from my camera, and if I forgot to charge my batteries, which is very frequently, I have to go find my USB wall charger thing, and if I can find that, then I have to find the extension cord that goes with that USB wall charger, because for whatever reason, the USB wall charger is like made for people that like, I don't know, it's made for like ants or something. It's so short and it doesn't work on any of the outlets that I have in my house. Once I find that and I'm all like situated and sat down, then I have to make sure that the lighting is okay outside, and thankfully the lighting is good today. But if the lighting is not good, then I have to make sure I pull out my lights, and then it just goes on and on and on and on. And this is just for like the days where I'm filming these talking head videos. This doesn't even give you half of the steps that go into whenever I'm trying to film something that I'm working on, like for cosplay or 3D printing, because whenever that comes into play, then there's a whole other host of steps that I have to go through. And there have been times where I've gone through all of the mental gymnastics of setting everything up. I'm like right there, ready to hit the record button. I realize, oh man, I just washed my hair today. I don't want to get like filler primer or dust in my hair because I just spent an hour or so washing and drying and straightening it, and I don't want to have to go through that whole process after I do all of this sanding. So then nothing gets filmed. And that's fine if I'm not going to film anything, but I could still work on it, right? I could easily fix the whole issue with my hair being clean and all that and wanting to not get dust in it by just buying a shower cap on Amazon, which I totally did, and wearing that shower cap whenever I am sanding. If it gets me to get my stuff done, then who cares if it's the wrong way or the right way to do it? And I might have just said who cares there, but the reality is that I do care. Or I guess really the little voice in my head that tells me that no one is going to trust me if I have a shower cap on my head whenever I'm sanding my 3D prints, because who in their right mind is going to take advice and trust the opinion of someone that looks as ridiculous as they do whenever they're doing this?
You talking about me?
Try not to envision that every time you watch my tutorials from now on, I dare you. So this isn't how I envisioned my video on imposter syndrome to start, but here we are. And thank you again to that commenter for leaving such a nice comment, as well as all the other great comments on last week's video. I really appreciate it, and I love the response that I'm getting from that, and I'm glad it's resonating with you guys. I didn't realize how much that comment was going to speak to me, and speak to me in a different way in the other hurdles that I've been facing in terms of social media, as well as just not even really necessarily dealing with things as a cosplayer, but just dealing with things in general as a human that is trying to simply get through the day with this new diagnosis of ADHD. And that's the feeling that I'm a fraud and that I don't know what I'm doing, and I've basically made everything up until this point, and I've gotten along and somehow got myself here by sheer luck, and like all that other fun stuff that goes along with imposter syndrome. And yeah, that fun little voice in the back of our head that tells us that everything we did, we didn't actually work hard for it, and it was all just luck. So first off, what exactly is imposter syndrome? I could, Google the definition for you guys, but I personally do a lot better with real world examples. And right now I'm just dealing with this whole general feeling that I'm not worthy, or that what I do here on YouTube really isn't that big of a deal, because I got this email this past weekend that I should be really happy about. And it's that I got nominated as Cosplayer of the Year for the Gamers Awards. I'm having trouble, rationalizing that I'm worthy of getting such a nomination in the first place. I can't help but feel like the videos and posts that I've been putting out are really nothing special in the grand scheme of things, and that like really anyone could do what I do, because that's again ultimately why I make these videos in the first place. I want you to feel like you can do this too, because you can. But the thing is I do deserve to be nominated for this. I do deserve to be recognized for what I've done over the past year. This hasn't been an easy year for me in the slightest. I've spent a lot of time and energy getting my channel to the place where it is today, and I've spent even like more countless hours working on all of the costumes I've made over the past couple years, including this Bo-Katan cosplay that I know you're all probably sick of, but I am so proud of that costume, and I learned so much about myself in the process. And I've learned that I love sharing that whole process with you guys as well, and not just on like a physical tutorial how-to level, but I really like to share the mental side of it as well. Things like talking about my struggles with anxiety and dealing with failure and all of my mistakes in cosplay, and yet also just relearning how to do basic things like filming a YouTube video now that I've been diagnosed with ADHD and realize all of these things that kind of, get in my way of starting things and staying focused on them. Talking about having a mental disorder like ADHD and talking about even just getting diagnosed with it, as well as talking about all of the mental struggles that go alongside it, that's not easy. Even in this day and age where people are openly talking about mental health, it still is very hard. But I've learned that it's usually the things that are hard for me to do or seem hard for me to do that end up being the most fulfilling for me in the end. And that's why I continue to share what I share. So yeah, I was nominated for this Cosplayer of the Year award, and I would greatly appreciate it if you took the time to click the link down below to maybe send a vote my way, because I do deserve that nomination, even if I'm internally screaming at myself that I don't. Even just saying that out loud, that I do deserve this, doesn't feel right. For some reason, we're conditioned, especially on social media, to be humble and that kind of stuff. And me saying that feels like I'm not. And that's just the start of imposter syndrome for me. Going back to that comment from the beginning of the video, would you believe me if I told you one of the main reasons I started a YouTube channel in the first place was a lot of my creative process? I simply could not remember what I did to achieve the end product that I did for a lot of my costumes. The most notable one being my North cosplay from Detroit Become Human. I made that shirt in what my friend Dell would refer to as the Aries tornado, and I'm sure if I sat down and really tried to think and remember exactly what I did, I could probably suss out what I did. I genuinely think back on that shirt and how I made that, and it was just like I was in hyper-focus mode, and I was like cutting up shirts here and there, and I was sewing and seam ripping and all this kind of stuff. It was chaotic, and I could not sit here and tell you exactly how I made that shirt. I just know that I did. And this seems to be my biggest problem with feeling like an imposter, because this happens a lot with sewing based projects. I struggle a lot to describe how to sew something because it's not my biggest strength whenever it comes to cosplay. Like, one of those feelings is just feeling like I don't belong to that sewing side of the cosplay community, which is absolutely ridiculous whenever I say that out loud. I would never say that to someone else who sewed their costume. For some reason, I can't internalize that I make these things, because I always feel like whenever I'm making stuff, especially sewing, that it all comes together by sheer luck or by chance. And there's even stuff that I do on the daily for this YouTube channel, like writing scripts, that I feel like I'm not doing the right way because I do it differently because my brain needs me to do it differently. Like, for example, I do script out every single one of my videos. I may not follow it strictly, but I have to brain dump all of my stuff onto a page first before even thinking about sitting down and filming something for you guys, because if I don't, then we're just gonna be here for like 2 hours and I'm just gonna ramble on and never get to the point. For some reason, I have also equated writing scripts with actually being in my office, like where I am now, and typing out on my computer. But I've been taking a liking to actually writing my scripts on my phone, because sometimes whenever I have the urge to, open up Instagram, as I literally just did right now out of muscle memory, I will kind of scratch that itch by, actually writing on one of my apps. I use the ClickUp app, which is really nice because you can use it on the computer as well as on the phone. You can do it with like Google Docs and any like cloud-based program or whatever. It's been great because anytime I have an idea, I can literally just like pick up my phone, it's usually right next to me, and I can just bang out like a paragraph or two of a script. For whatever reason, whenever I'm typing on this phone, usually like upside down on the couch in the living room, my brain doesn't think of it as work. And then my brain is like, okay, how did you do this? Like, how did you get to this point? How did you get to this point of having a completed script? Like, you didn't sit down for 2 straight hours and bang out the script. You were doing this off and on throughout the week in like short little bursts. And it's one of those things, like, again, I'm really struggling with it because I feel like I'm doing things the wrong way. And there is no right way, especially if whatever I'm doing is working for me. That's all that should matter. But why do I care? Like, again, if what I'm doing works, like, do I have to hold myself to some arbitrary standard when this is what my brain likes best? And clearly I'm getting work done. Like, I have the work in front of me to show for it. Why am I internally struggling with not looking like the status quo or something like that? Or looking like, you know, one of those aesthetic vlogs on YouTube of, I'm a content creator and here's what I do in a day. The whole reason that I love cosplay as a hobby in itself is that there are essentially no rules to doing it. I consider cosplay to just be a form of wearable fan art. So if there's some detail on a cosplay or a costume that I want to make that is really stressing me out and I'm actually spending more energy stressing out about having to make that piece, you better bet that I'm either going to A, find a place where I can buy that piece or find someone that I can commission that piece off of, or B, I'm just gonna not do it and I'm not gonna put it on my costume. And a good example of that is for the first year of wearing my Bo-Katan cosplay, I didn't have a jetpack because I struggled to print out that jetpack and never successfully 3D printed it. And then I had to wait on a resin cast that I eventually ended up purchasing. And the reason I was okay with not having a jetpack for that long is because it's on your back. And most of the photos that you get during the day, like at a convention, they're gonna be from the front. So I didn't really care if there wasn't anything on my back. And if somebody at the convention were to come up to me and be like, hey, where's your jetpack at, Bo? I usually will just quit back like, oh, I left it on the ship or something. And if someone's asking me that on a Sunday, then I'm just gonna look at them and be like, it's Sunday of a convention. I think the reason that a lot of cosplayers struggle with imposter syndrome is because a lot of the things that we use for cosplay, we're using in an out-of-the-box kind of way. Like, just think about if no one had ever picked up a pack of that EVA foam from Harbor Freight. Like, usually you just use those in shops and you put those in gyms to just stand on. But someone actually went in there and was like, I'm gonna use those and I'm gonna make some armor out of them. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it. Same thing goes for using automotive primers and things like Bondo in order to fill in lines on 3D prints. We use so many things that are not specifically tailored for cosplay that it only makes sense that we kind of being unsure of how to use said products because, again, we're using these things that are not meant to be used on 3D prints. I don't think the inventor of Duplicolor Primer or of Bondo thought in a million years that his stuff would be used to smooth lines on 3D prints. So I try to remind myself whenever I get into these spirals of feeling like an imposter that I don't really think any of us know what we're doing in cosplay. You know, I constantly say that in order to grow as a maker or a cosplayer, you have to continually fail and fail again, and you just have to keep on learning and keep on growing from that. But sometimes you just really want to feel like you belong in a community that you just love so much. And I think that's really where a lot of this imposter syndrome comes from. You might just feel like you don't belong, or you don't feel like you're good enough to belong in this community, which when I say that out loud and I say that knowing that other people are going to hear this, it sounds ridiculous. And this leads me to a couple of ways that I try to cope with this feeling. Though, as you can probably tell, not all of these are working fairly well, but again, you're coming along with me for this whole journey. So just understand that I'm a work in progress as much as you are. The first thing is that most people are only really worried about themselves. I don't mean that to come off sounding like rude or anything, but it is kind of the truth. Just think about yourself in your own day-to-day life. Like, you're probably sitting around like worried about your next to-do thing that you have to do. Like right now I'm worried about finishing this video so I can go feed my friend's cat after that, and I want to get out before it rains. Everyone always has like their own things going on in their head. They have their own struggles, their own stuff like that. And whenever I start thinking like, oh, I don't belong here, or oh, people don't like me, or stuff like those kind of thoughts, I just try to remind myself that everyone's got their own thing going on, and people really aren't thinking that harshly of me at any given moment. And if they are, then that's their problem, and I have to just be okay with that. Even if people think these things about me, That's their opinion. It's not a fact about myself. It becomes a fact about myself whenever I start to listen to that and start to internalize it. So I just try to remind myself that everyone's got their own things going on. I may feel like I don't belong in a Joann's like fabric section because I can't tell the difference between the weaves of fabric, but like not knowing that one thing doesn't not make me a cosplayer or takes away all of the accomplishments and things that I've sewn in the past. I just don't know the difference between like different fabrics, and that's okay. Everyone in this hobby has their own gaps of knowledge, and it's ridiculous to expect that none of us have any gaps at all. This hobby is like a bajillion hobbies wrapped up into one. The other thing I do is I try my best to recognize my accomplishments. Now, this is very much easier said than done. And yes, I am not doing a very good job of it now. Late last year, I made this Instagram post that I keep coming back to month after month. I really just talked about how I was tired of being on this costuming, cosplay hamster wheel where I would work really hard on a costume and then I would immediately jump into the next project. At the time, I thought it was something to do with ADHD and like I just needed to be working on something to like have that stimulation and that dopamine hit of just, working on stuff and being able to post it all the time. But I've actually realized that it was me hiding from my accomplishments. I would finish a costume and immediately think, okay, what's next? Like I had to continually improve upon things and show up and just prove that I belonged, as ridiculous as that sounds. Like social media really plays a big part in this too. Every time I logged onto social media, I was getting reminded of all of these other people's big builds and getting things done. And then I would think to myself like, oh, why am I not getting any more costumes done this year? Like I have the time, so what's holding me back? Well, the big elephant in I just spit. Big elephant in the room is that I actually do not have time for any of this because of a thing called time blindness. And there are just these grand ideas I had for costumes to make that they just did not fit alongside my plans for 2022 of just like getting right with myself, like going back to therapy, getting assessed and diagnosed for ADHD. And like I'm still dealing with and processing that diagnosis, which I think I'm in the acceptance phase of the 5 stages of grief by this point. And that's not even getting into all the other stuff that we're doing, like redoing the basement, which is going to be taking up a lot of my time come the end of September throughout October. Like I'm just not going to have any time to work on anything. That still doesn't stop me from thinking like every time I'm playing a video game or just going out for a walk or reading or doing some of the leisure activities that I didn't have time for whenever I was constantly crunching costumes like I was before, that I couldn't just swap that time and then work on costumes during that time. The truth of all of this is that I didn't realize just how big of a mental toll all of this ADHD and anxiety and mental health stuff would just like take a toll on me this year, that I realized that it's a lot easier to just kind of take a look back on past years and realize what a huge deal it was for me to like finish all of those costumes, like finishing that Bo and Mando costume in the state that I was in. I was wading through so much stress and like just mental spaghetti to get through all of that stuff that I didn't have time to just be a person and exist. And that's why I keep coming back to this Instagram post, like where I said that I'm going to stick to re-wearing costumes and not stressing out about cosplaying every day at a convention if I don't want to. I don't have to show up to a convention with a new costume every single time I go. I don't need to have an ongoing project. I could just let myself sit back and actually enjoy wearing my Bo-Katan cosplay and upgrading it as the year went on like I did. And I realize now that that constant need to jump into a new project whenever I was done with one, I wasn't giving myself the space to properly recognize my accomplishment of what I'd done. Going forward, whenever I finish a project, I am going to be incorporating some type of rest and reward after that. Like no projects for at least a month or something like that. This is, a common thing in long distance running. I used to run half marathons and marathons back in the day. And after you run a marathon, which is 26 miles or 26.2 miles, sorry, you have to have rest after that. You can't put your body through that and then immediately try to run the next day. It's not going to work. Or if it does work for you, then more power to you, but it didn't work for me. So it's very important to make sure that you rest and, reward yourself and just recognize the accomplishment of completing a costume, because that is a huge, huge accomplishment. Even with everything that I've said today in this video, you're always going to feel like an imposter whenever you start something new. That's not going to be a feeling that goes away, and if you're able to do things without that feeling, then I highly envy you. Feeling lost and not knowing if you're doing the right things is just common whenever you're starting out, and it's something that we just have to be okay with whenever we're starting something new. I mean, you might even be 5, like 10, or even 20 plus years into this hobby and you still feel that way. But the important thing that I always like to stress is that you're going to make mistakes. No matter what you do, no matter how much you research this hobby, no matter how many YouTube rabbit holes you go down, you're going to make a mistake. You're probably going to make several mistakes. And it's what you do whenever you make those mistakes and after that is what's most important. It's why I continue to show up here and make videos and make posts about the mistakes that I've made, the struggles that I've had with my mental health, and also with, getting diagnosed with ADHD. If I can make at least one person realize it's okay to start something new and fail at it, then my job is worth it. Your imposter syndrome is healed. I have healed you. I wish it was that easy. Dealing with imposter syndrome is not going to be easy, and it's not going to look like a straight line, You're going to have some bad days where it's really going to get to you. Just try to remember that it's progress, not perfection. Know that mistakes are going to happen, so you might as well just put them on your task list already and get it out of the way. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed filming it and writing it, because this is one of those things that, again, is near and dear to my heart. I'll probably never get rid of the feeling of feeling like an imposter, but I'm doing as best as I can. And as always, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. What are things that you do to deal with this, or how to cope with it? Thank you to my Patreon supporters for your generous support of my work and what I'm trying to do over here, as well as just being a general awesome group of people to hang out with on Discord. And as a reminder, if you sign up during the month of September at the $5 tier or above, you end up getting this free 5x7 print of my Bo-Katan cosplay. But if you can't, don't worry, it is totally okay. Watching this video all the way to the end is more than enough, and I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. So those are my thoughts on imposter syndrome. As always, I will catch you guys next time. Bye!
This is by far the smartest thing I've ever done. I don't even care how stupid I look right now.